The pact we made, the light at the end of the tunnel wasn't daylight. It flickered, erratic, artificial, humming with unstable voltage. A failed generator, maybe, or emergency systems never fully shut down. We approached it carefully, weapons drawn, breath slow and shallow. Every sound was amplified down here, the creak of boots on steel, Clover's claws tapping against old flooring, Mariah's breath steady beside me. The hatch ahead had half rotted through, peeled from the hinges by rust and neglect. Carl gave it a nudge with his boot. It groaned open like a mouth too long closed. The facility's lower wing was exactly what we feared. Rows of abandoned labs, broken glass, torn restraints still bolted to exam chairs. Monitors flashed data with no source. A nightmare still echoing even without the people to power it. Mariah stood frozen beside a chair, fingers brushing a worn strap. "This was the room from the file," she said quietly, "where they kept the twins." Juno moved toward a wall panel, peeling back layers of wiring. "I can reboot the central log system. If we want evidence, it's buried in here somewhere." "No," Mariah's voice was sharp. "We're not here to collect trophies. We came to shut this place down." I put a hand on her shoulder. "And we will." But Juno tapped the panel anyway, bringing up a flickering schematic. "There's still one sealed sublevel. Has its own power loop. That means something's alive down there, or someone." We all went still. Carl stepped in close. "A survivor? Or a trap," Juno said. "Only one way to find out," Mariah answered. We followed the emergency ladder shaft down, Clover lowering himself after us, carefully navigating each step like a giant cat. The air turned colder, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Condensation dripped from above. The hum of the sublevel grew louder. Then the door appeared. Steel. Fresh. Reinforced. Not abandoned. Carl checked the side panel. Biometric lock. Clover stepped forward before we could stop him, placing a claw against the scanner. It clicked green. The door opened. Inside was a chamber glowing blue, almost serene in contrast to the rot above. And in the center was her. A girl. 79. No older than 12. Floating in suspension, her eyes closed, breathing steady. Tubes connected to her arms. Readouts pulsed around her. A name etched in glowing text above the pod, Project Mirror. Mariah stepped closer. She's me. No, Juno said, scanning the display. She's a clone. Built from your DNA. Probably a backup protocol in case you ever broke away. That's what I was to them. Mariah whispered. A blueprint. I touched her arm. No, you're the original. You're the storm that broke their cage. What do we do with her? Carl asked. Mariah didn't answer right away. She moved to the side of the pod and rested her hand against the glass. Wake her up, she said finally, but gently. Juno nodded, fingers flying over the console. The suspension fluid began to drain. The girl stirred. As her eyes fluttered open, she looked up at Mariah and smiled. No fear, just recognition. Mariah knelt as the chamber unlocked, catching the girl as she fell forward. It's okay, she whispered. You're safe now. The girl nodded once, then buried her face in Mariah's shoulder. And for the first time in that place, there was peace. We stayed just long enough to download the files, wipe the core, and plant charges along the main systems. As we ascended back through the levels, I looked down one last time. Smoke was already curling up. By the time we hit the surface, the whole mountain groaned beneath us. Clover roared once, sharp and proud, as the base lit up behind us in a fire that reached for the stars. No more cages. No more secrets. Just the pact we made to protect, to fight, and to never stop running toward the light, even if we had to carve it out of the dark ourselves. The fire behind us raged like it had a soul of its own, casting gold and crimson shadows that danced across the ridgeline. We didn't speak for a long time. There was nothing to say. Just the heat on our backs, the soft shuffle of boots over dry rock, and the tiny heartbeat of the girl nestled against Mariah's chest. 80. Clover padded beside us, ever watchful, his reptilian eyes scanning every hilltop. Even he seemed quieter, more thoughtful, as if the destruction we'd left behind meant something deeper to him too. Mariah walked slightly ahead, cradling the girl protectively. Her name, we'd learned from the logs, was Elsie. Born 6 years ago in the lowest level of that place, never once seeing the sky. No language, no sun, only shadows and silence and lab-coated ghosts. Now she was out. Free. At one point, Mariah looked down at her, brushing hair out of her face. "See that?" she whispered, pointing to the horizon. "That's dawn. That's what it looks like when the world doesn't end." Elsie blinked, then nodded. We made camp a mile down the ridge, near an old ranger's tower that hadn't seen use in decades. Juno ran diagnostics, Carl kept watch, and I stoked a fire that crackled like it was trying to remind us warmth still existed in this world. Mariah sat with her back against a boulder, arms around Elsie, who was fast asleep now, curled up like a shadow finally learning how to be human. I dropped down beside her, handing her a canteen. "She looks peaceful." Mariah nodded, but her face was unreadable. "I don't know what to do with this." "With what?" "This feeling. Like I got a piece of myself back I never knew was missing." I sat in silence for a while, letting the firelight flicker across both of us. "You don't have to have all the answers," I said finally. "You just have to show her something better than what came before." She leaned into me, head resting gently on my shoulder. "And if I can't?" "You already did." There was a long pause, filled only by the wind brushing past the trees and the low murmur of Clover's breath nearby. Then, softly, Mariah said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I never could," I whispered back. Above us, the stars were starting to fade, and the sky turned from black to indigo to soft blue. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But in that moment, it felt like we were building something real. Not just a resistance. Not just revenge. A future. And we'd fight for it. Every step of the way. 81. By mid-morning, the forest began to shift around us. The rigid, windswept rock gave way to thick trees and broken trails, sunbeams filtering through branches like hesitant hope. Birds called to each other, actual birds. Not drones, not surveillance whistles. Just nature unafraid. Carl scouted ahead while Juno walked beside Mariah, their voices low, exchanging technical readings and power scans. Clover sniffed out anything that twitched in the underbrush, tail swaying behind like a blade of instinct ready to snap. I trailed close behind Mariah and Elsie, watching how naturally the girl had taken to her. She never let go of Mariah's jacket hem, not once. The way a child holds to their only thread of safety. "You ever think you'd be someone's hero?" I asked Mariah softly. She glanced back at me with a lopsided smile. "No. I thought I'd be the reason someone else needed one. But you're not." "I am," she said. "Or at least, I was. The things I did before, they don't erase what you're doing now." Her lips parted to argue, but she stopped. Maybe because she knew I wouldn't let her carry that weight alone. "Not anymore." Then we heard it, movement. Sharp. Coordinated. Clover growled low. Carl's voice buzzed over the comm. 5 hostiles, South Ridge. Light armor. Guns drawn. Mariah didn't hesitate. She handed Elsie gently to Juno, who wrapped the girl in her arms and ducked behind a moss-covered log. I stepped to Mariah's side, rifle drawn. We moved without words. The first 2 enemies came in hard, flanking left, suppressive fire tearing through bark and air. Mariah took cover behind a fallen tree and returned fire with brutal precision, dropping one in seconds. I circled right, angling for the second, tagging him in the thigh. He collapsed, howling. The last 3 tried to fall back, but Carl intercepted one with a brutal blow to the gut, and Juno disabled another with a stun pulse from her wristband. The 5th? Mariah was already standing over him, gun raised. He froze, hands trembling. "Drop it," she said. He did. Slowly. Then dropped to his knees. "Who sent you?" I asked. He looked between us. We were told this area was abandoned. That the subjects had fled. We were cleanup. That's all. 82. Mariah stepped closer. Subjects, not people. He said nothing. She reached down, grabbed his earpiece, crushed it under her boot, then turned and walked back toward Elsie without another word. Juno was already calming the girl. "It's okay," she murmured. "They're gone now. You're safe." When Mariah reached them, Elsie immediately reached out, latching onto her again like gravity itself had brought her home. "Come on," Mariah said, her voice stronger than before. "We keep moving. We're not done yet." And we weren't. Because someone out there still thought they owned us. Still thought we could be erased. But they were wrong. We weren't ghosts anymore. We were flame. We were thunder. We were survivors who'd chosen to become something more. And no one would cage us again. A low, gravel-dragged voice cut through the night like a knife. "You thought you could get away." Mariah stiffened beside me. Elise's breath hitched. Clover let out a low growl, lips pulling back over rows of sharp teeth. I turned slow, planting myself in front of them both, every nerve lit. A figure stepped from the mist. Broad, armored, helmet tucked under one arm like a soldier in a funeral procession. His face scarred, familiar, caught in the pale spill of moonlight. It was Commander Voss. I hadn't seen him since the first breakout. Since the labs burned. Since we thought he died with the rest of the old world we torched behind us. "You're supposed to be dead," I said, voice low. He smiled. "So are you." Mariah stood now, behind me, silent but steady. Elise clutched her tightly, wide-eyed. "Tell me," Voss said, pacing with the slow grace of a panther, "what was the plan? Hijack the relay? Broadcast some sob story to the world? Think the public gives a damn about kids raised in test tubes and taught to kill before they could read?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He was here for a reason. And it wasn't to negotiate. 83. "You know what I see when I look at you, Jay," he said, voice dripping with contempt. "A mistake that thinks it's a miracle." I stepped forward. Just once. Enough to let him know I wasn't afraid. "Funny," I said. "When I look at you, I just see someone who's scared." He chuckled. "Scared? No. I am the storm. I don't chase ghosts. I bury them." And then he reached for the gun at his hip. But I was already moving. Not for a weapon. For Mariah. My fingers found hers, squeezing once, the way we always did before we struck together. "On your mark," I whispered. Her voice was fire and ice. "Now." And all hell broke loose. From the ridge above, a voice boomed down, steady, confident. "We got you covered, kid. Go." Spotlights flared to life, sweeping across the darkened landscape. The sound of rotor blades thundered overhead, two Blackhawks hovering low, doors open, muzzles pointed. From behind the rocks, silhouettes surged forward, Carl, Juno, and a dozen more resistance fighters, guns blazing, laying down a curtain of suppressing fire. Voss spun, surprised, momentarily exposed. I didn't hesitate. Gripping Mariah's hand, I yanked her and Elise toward the slope behind us. Clover whirled around, flanking us, growling as she ran, raptor instincts razor sharp. Bullets sparked across the stone. Voss's voice roared out, "You think this is over?" But I didn't look back. "Jay, faster." Mariah shouted, her arm wrapped tight around Elise's waist as we stumbled down the rocky path. The wind lashed at our faces. The scream of engines above. The flash of gunfire behind. But we were breaking free. We were alive. And we weren't alone. I pulled Mariah close, pressing her body against mine as we ducked behind a jagged outcrop. Her breath hitched, warm and fast against my neck. Elise clung to her side, small and trembling, but safe for now. 84. The roar of the Blackhawks above blended with the crack of gunfire, a chaotic symphony that promised both danger and salvation. My arms tightened around Mariah's shoulders, grounding us both in the chaos. "I've got you," I whispered. "No matter what." She leaned into me, her fingers curling into the back of my jacket. Her voice was barely audible, raw with emotion. "Don't let go." I didn't. Not then. Not ever. We stayed pressed together, the world around us a blur of noise and shadows. The cold night air bit at my skin, but Mariah's warmth was a shield stronger than any armor. Her heartbeat thrummed steady against my chest, a rhythm I wanted to memorize and keep safe forever. Elise, nestled between us, finally let out a shaky breath, her tiny hands clutching Mariah's coat like a lifeline. I watched as Mariah whispered softly to her, words meant to soothe a child born in a cage and raised on fear. Somewhere above, the helicopters circled, their searchlights painting the cliffs and trees in harsh beams. The resistance was holding the line, buying us time, giving us a chance. I tightened my grip again, as if Cherwell could keep the storm at bay. "We'll get through this," I promised, voice low but fierce. "Together." Mariah lifted her face, eyes shining in the moonlight, fierce and unbroken. "Together," she echoed. And as the night raged on around us, I knew, no matter the darkness ahead, we had something no enemy could take away. Each other. The distant thud of helicopters faded slowly, swallowed by the thick canopy above. The forest seemed to breathe with us now, alive, watchful, protective. Mariah pulled back slightly, searching my eyes. "We need to keep moving. The others will circle back for us, but Elise can't stay out here long." I nodded, already shifting into action mode. The firelight from our temporary camp was miles behind us now, swallowed by shadows and the promise of something new. Clover stepped forward, sensing the shift. The raptor's eyes gleamed faintly as it led the way down a narrow deer path winding deeper into the woods, away from prying eyes and danger. Mariah adjusted her grip on Elise and glanced at me. "You ready for whatever comes next?" I gave a small, determined smile. "Always." As we slipped into the trees, the weight of everything we'd lost and everything we still had to fight for settled around us like a second skin. But this time, we weren't running anymore. We were reclaiming, and nothing would stand in our way. 85. The heavy thrum of rotors cut through the night, a deep, rolling pulse that vibrated in my chest. Above the treetops, a Chinook helicopter emerged from the shadows, its dual blades slicing the air with relentless power. The massive craft banked low, spotlights scanning the forest floor, casting long, jagged beams that pierced through the darkness. Mariah's grip on Elise tightened as the helicopter's shadow passed over us. Carl's voice crackled through the con, steady but urgent. "Chinook's here. Extraction's close. Get ready." I glanced up, the silhouette of the Chinook hanging against the moonlit sky like a guardian beast. Its rear ramp lowered with a mechanical groan, and figures began to rappel down, fast and efficient. The resistance was arriving, our lifeline in this fight. Clover growled softly, but didn't move, eyes fixed on the descending soldiers. "Hold tight," I whispered to Mariah. "We're almost clear." The forest echoed with the beat of helicopter blades and the promise of rescue. For the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel fragile. It felt unstoppable. 86. Into the fire, the Chinook's roar faded behind us as we sprinted through the thick underbrush, adrenaline hammering in my veins. Mariah held Elise close, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion lining her face. Clover moved silently beside us, every muscle taut, ready for whatever waited in the dark. Ahead, the glow of the safe house flickered like a distant beacon, our fragile sanctuary in a world turned hostile. Carl and Juno were already there, setting up defenses, faces grim but determined. "We don't have much time," Carl said, scanning the perimeter. "Voss isn't giving up." Mariah's jaw tightened. "Neither are we." I glanced at Elise, sleeping now, safe for the moment. "We move fast, hit hard," I said, "because this fight's just beginning." Together, we stepped into the fire. The night air was thick with tension as we crossed the threshold of the safe house, its battered walls seeming to close around us like a shield, fragile, but enough for now. The scent of burnt wood and wet earth mixed with the low hum of generators struggling to keep the place alive. Mariah settled Elise in a makeshift cot, wrapping her in a worn blanket that smelled faintly of pine and hope. The girl's eyes fluttered open briefly, searching, then closing again as sleep reclaimed her. Carl handed me a fresh rifle, the metal cool and reassuring in my hands. "They'll come for us here," he said. "Voss knows this is our last stand." Juno was already tapping furiously at her console, pulling up surveillance feeds, signal maps, anything to give us an edge. We have a small window before their next wave. Enough to plan. Mariah caught my gaze, determination burning bright in her eyes. We fight smart. We fight together. I nodded, the weight of everything settling on my shoulders, the battles behind us, the ones ahead, the promise we'd made to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The night wasn't over, not by a long shot. But as we prepared for the coming storm, I felt something I hadn't dared in a long time. Hope. And with it, the fierce promise that we would not just survive. We would win. I scooted closer to Mariah, the quiet rustle of the blanket beneath us barely noticeable in the hum of the safe house. Her eyes met mine for a moment, tired, fierce, and unyielding, and something soft flickered there, like a fragile flame struggling to stay alive. 87. My hand found hers, fingers intertwining instinctively, grounding both of us in the storm that circled just beyond these walls. Elise stirred softly in her sleep, the steady rise and fall of her breath a reminder of what we were fighting for. Mariah's voice dropped low, almost a whisper. We've come so far, but it feels like the hardest part is still ahead. I tighten my grip gently. Whatever comes next, we face it together. You, me, Elise, and everyone who's still holding on. She leaned in, her forehead resting lightly against mine. Together, she breathed. For a brief moment, the war faded into the background, leaving only us fragile, fierce, and unbreakable. I stayed close, letting the silence stretch between us like a quiet promise. Outside, the night held its breath, the distant sounds of movement reminding us the fight was far from over. But here, in this small, battered room, there was something like peace. Mariah's fingers traced slow circles on the back of my hand, each touch a lifeline. You ever think about what happens when this is all over? She asked, voice soft, but edged with something I couldn't quite place. I swallowed, the weight of the future pressing down. I think about waking up without looking over my shoulder. About building something real, no running, no hiding. She smiled, a flash of something hopeful. Maybe one day, we'll get that chance. I brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, the tenderness in the gesture belying the chaos around us. We will. I promise. Her eyes held mine then, steady, fierce, and alive. We have to. And as the first hints of dawn crept through the cracked window, I knew we weren't just surviving anymore. We were fighting for a future worth living. The pale light stretched slowly across the walls, softening the harsh edges of the room. Mariah shifted beside me, her breath steady now, the tension in her shoulders easing just enough to let me see the cracks beneath her armor. Elise stirred again, blinking sleepily, her small hand reaching out instinctively to find Mariah's. The sight made something ache inside me, a fierce protectiveness mixed with a fragile hope I hadn't dared to feel in years. Outside, the safe house was alive with quiet preparation. Carl and Juno moved like shadows, setting traps, checking weapons, readying for whatever storm was coming next. The weight of the fight pressed down on all of us, but for a moment, here, it felt like we were just people broken, tired, but still holding on. I tightened my hold on Mariah's hand, letting the silence between us carry all the words we couldn't say. 88. We'll get through this, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Her gaze lifted, locking onto mine with fierce certainty. Together. And as the first real light spilled over the horizon, I dared to believe her. The morning light crept in slow, painting everything with a fragile gold. Outside, the world was waking, birds beginning their songs, leaves stirring in the gentle breeze, but inside, the weight of the coming battle pressed heavily on us all. Mariah rose quietly, cradling Elise close as she moved toward the small makeshift table. She poured water into a chipped cup, offering some to the girl who accepted it with sleepy eyes. I followed her gaze, watching the way she softened when she looked at Elise, the fierce warrior melting into something tender and hopeful. Carl approached, his voice low but urgent. We have reports, boss is gathering forces. They'll hit us before nightfall. Mariah nodded, lips pressed tight. Then we prepare. Juno's fingers flew over the keyboard. I'm boosting our signal jammers. Should buy us some interference, but not for long. I took a deep breath, feeling the calm before the storm settle inside me. Mariah looked back at me, her eyes steady. "We're ready," she said. And for the first time in a long time, so was I. We gathered around the rough wooden table, weapons laid out like old friends, each one a promise, a lifeline. Mariah's eyes scanned the room, sharp and alert despite the exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin. Elise nestled close to her side, still too young to grasp the full weight of what we were facing. Carl spread a crudely drawn map across the table, fingers tracing paths and choke points. "They'll come from the East Ridge, moving fast. We'll need to hold them at the barricade and fall back to the safe house if we have to." Juno nodded, her face pale but determined. "I've set up surveillance drones around the perimeter. They'll give us early warning, but only if we stay vigilant." Mariah clenched her jaw, then looked to me. "Jay, you and I take the west flank. Keep them from circling." I met her gaze without hesitation. "Got it." She reached out, squeezing my hand. "Stay close." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows like a warning. The sky darkened as clouds gathered. A storm was coming, and with it, the reckoning we'd been preparing for. I took one last breath, steadying myself. "We fight for every step forward," I said. Mariah's eyes blazed. 89. For every life we've lost. For every future we still believe in. Together, we moved to our positions, ready to meet the fire head-on. The first thunder rolled in the distance, low and menacing, as the shadows deepened around the safe house. Mariah and I slipped through the underbrush toward the west flank, each step measured, every sense alert. The trees closed around us like silent sentinels, hiding us from prying eyes but offering little comfort. Elisa's quiet breathing still echoed softly in my mind, a fragile reminder of what was at stake. "Think they know we're coming?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. Mariah shook her head. "They underestimate us. They always do." Ahead, the faint flicker of enemy patrol lights danced between the trees. The faint hum of armored vehicles rumbled closer, a mechanical heartbeat growing louder with each passing second. I readied my rifle, feeling the familiar weight steady my hands. Mariah crouched beside me, her eyes fierce beneath the darkened canopy. On my mark, we waited, breath held, hearts synced. Then the forest erupted. Gunfire shattered the night, echoing through the trees like a savage drum. Shadows surged forward, figures clad in black, weapons blazing. Mariah dove into the fray, precise and unstoppable, covering my flank as I picked off targets one by one. The ground shook with the force of explosions, the air thick with smoke and the sharp sting of gunpowder. In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of Elisa's face, eyes wide but brave, and I knew there was no turning back. This was our fight, our stand, and we would not fall. Amid the chaos, a moment of stillness broke through. Mariah pressed close, nuzzling into my side as we ducked behind a fallen tree. Her breath was warm against my neck, soft and steady amidst the storm raging around us. Her fingers curled into my jacket, holding on not just for support, but for something deeper, a lifeline. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her closer, feeling the fierce heartbeat beneath her ribs, a reminder that no matter what came next, we weren't alone. "Stay with me," she whispered. "I'm right here, I promised." And together, we faced the fire. 90. The world around us blurred, gunfire crackling like thunder, shadows twisting in the smoke. But in that small space, all that mattered was the steady beat of Mariah's heart against mine. Her fingers tightened, a silent vow I could feel deep in my bones. I breathed her in, the scent of pine, sweat, and something unspoken, something raw and real. After this, she murmured, voice rough with exhaustion and something softer beneath, "We'll find a way back. To something normal. To us." I swallowed hard, the weight of that promise heavy but welcome. "Whatever it takes," I said. She lifted her face, eyes shimmering in the dim light, fierce and vulnerable all at once. We survived this. Together. And as the battle roared around us, I knew those words weren't just hope. They were a declaration. The distant roar of gunfire continued, but our world had narrowed to just the two of us, breathing, holding on, refusing to break. Mariah's forehead rested lightly against my chest, her fingers still tangled in my jacket, as if anchoring us both against the chaos. I could feel the tension slowly ebbing from her body, replaced by something fragile but unyielding. "Jay," she whispered, voice barely audible over the storm, "promise me, no matter what happens, we don't lose this." I tightened my hold, voice steady even as my heart pounded. "I promise. We fight for this, for us." Her eyes lifted, searching mine, fierce with unspoken emotion. We survived together. And in that fleeting moment, amidst the thunder of war and shadows of doubt, we found something worth fighting for beyond the battle, a connection deeper than fear, stronger than any enemy. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were beginning to live. She pressed her midsection into me deeply, the heat of her body grounding me like nothing else could. The world, its chaos, its dangers faded into the background, swallowed by the steady beat of her heart against mine. Her breath mingled with mine, warm and urgent, pulling me closer into that fragile space where nothing else mattered. Her hands slid up, fingers threading through my hair as she looked up at me with eyes full of fierce need and quiet longing. "Stay with me," she whispered, voice husky. I tightened my arms around her, holding her close, every part of me answering the silent plea. "In this fight, in everything, I'm yours. 91. She smiled then, a small, fierce curve of lips that promised survival, connection, and something more. And for that moment, wrapped in each other, we were unstoppable. Our lips met, first gentle, a tentative brush, but then fire ignited between us, fierce and unyielding. The kiss deepened, urgency spilling over as if we were trying to swallow years of pain, fear, and longing in a single breath. Her hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, grounding us both against the chaos that still whispered beyond our world. Every heartbeat thudded loud and wild, a drumbeat to a battle we fought not with weapons, but with everything we'd held back for so long. I tasted the strength beneath her vulnerability, the fierce hope that refused to break. We lost ourselves in that moment, raw, electric, and desperately alive, knowing that no matter what came next, this connection was ours to hold. The world could wait. For now, there was only us. 92. Breaking Point the dawn was barely a whisper when the enemy's first wave crashed against our defenses. The air erupted with gunfire, the sharp cracks and thuds weaving into a relentless storm of sound and fury. Smoke curled upward, twisting like ghostly fingers clawing at the gray sky. Mariah and I moved in sync, a practiced rhythm born from countless battles, each step measured, each shot precise. Elise huddled safely behind the barricade, protected by Carl and the others who held their ground like steel. But as the hours stretched on, exhaustion began to seep into our bones. Muscles screamed, breaths came ragged, and the relentless tide of enemies pressed harder, fiercer. Amid the chaos, I caught a glimpse of Mariah, her face streaked with grime and sweat, eyes burning with a fire that refused to wane even as her body faltered. "Jay," she called, voice strained but steady. "We need to fall back to the inner perimeter. They're breaking through." I nodded, grabbing her arm, feeling the tremor beneath her grip. "We'll cover the retreat. Together." We moved fast, shielding each other as we pulled back, every moment a desperate dance on the edge of collapse. As we reached the safety of the inner walls, Mariah stumbled, her strength finally giving way. I caught her before she hit the ground, holding her close. "We can't lose you," I said fiercely, voice raw. She looked up at me, breathless, eyes filled with a mix of pain and determination. "You won't." But in that moment, under the weight of battle and loss, I realized we were all nearing our breaking point. And the war was far from over. The crackling gunfire softened for a heartbeat, replaced by the heavy thud of our ragged breaths. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of burned earth, wrapping around us like a suffocating shroud. Mariah's body trembled in my arms, not from fear, but from sheer exhaustion. I pressed my forehead against hers, feeling the warmth of her skin despite the cold that seeped into our bones. "Lean on me," I whispered, voice barely audible over the distant echoes of battle. "We're not done yet." Her eyes fluttered closed for a moment before snapping open, fierce and unyielding. "We fight. We survive. No matter the cost." I nodded, gripping her tighter. Together. Behind us, the resistance regrouped, rallying like a heartbeat that refused to fade. Carl's voice cut through the haze, steady and commanding. "Hold your ground. Reinforcements are on the way." 93. The distant roar of engines stirred hope in the pit of my stomach. Juno's drones buzzed overhead, scanning, hunting for weaknesses in the enemy's lines. Mariah's grip on my hand steadied, her breath syncing with mine. The battlefield wasn't just a place of destruction. It was where we forged our will, sharpened by fire and bound by trust. I pulled her close again, feeling the fierce pulse of life between us, raw, real, and relentless. No matter how dark the night, we would find our dawn. The night dragged on like an endless storm, gunfire and explosions painting the darkness in flashes of red and orange. Each moment stretched thin, exhaustion clawed at my body, but I couldn't let go. Not now. Not when everything we'd fought for was hanging by a thread. Mariah's voice broke through the chaos, steady but tired. "Jay, we need to push forward. If we don't take the East Ridge, they'll surround us." I met her eyes, fiery, unbreakable despite the weariness, and nodded. "Let's finish this." Together, we surged forward, moving through the smoke and debris like shadows. Every step was a battle, every breath a victory. The enemy was relentless, but so were we. When we finally reached the ridge, the dawn was bleeding across the horizon, a pale promise of hope. I looked at Mariah, sweat and dirt streaking her face, and knew with certainty we had fought to see this moment. She smiled, a fierce, tired curve of lips. "We're still here. We're still standing," I replied. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot, but in that fragile light, we found strength to carry on. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the smoke, casting long shadows over the battered landscape. The enemy was retreating, their lines broken and scattered, but the cost was written on every face around me. Mariah leaned against a crumbling wall, her breath steadying, eyes searching the horizon as if seeing beyond the fight. I approached quietly, sliding an arm around her shoulders. "We made it." She leaned into me, exhaustion melting into something softer. Because we didn't give up. Around us, the resistance rallied, weary but unbroken, proof that even in the darkest hours, hope could burn bright. I squeezed Mariah's hand gently. "This is just the beginning." She looked up, determination blazing anew. "Then let's make sure it counts." And as the sun climbed higher, we prepared to rebuild from the ashes, to fight not just for survival, but for a future worth claiming. The warmth of the morning sun felt strange against my skin after the cold and chaos of night. Every muscle ached, every breath came heavy, but beneath it all was a fierce pulse of something more, renewal, determination, a stubborn refusal to surrender. 94. Mariah stood beside me, her silhouette outlined by the rising light. Her eyes held the same fire that had carried us through the darkest hours, now tempered with a quiet hope I hadn't seen in a long time. "We've lost a lot," she said softly, voice carrying the weight of memories and grief. "But we've still got each other." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "And we've got a future to fight for." She reached out, her hand finding mine, steady, warm, real. The touch anchored me, pulling me back from the edge of doubt and fear. Behind us, the safe house buzzed with renewed energy. Survivors moving, healing, preparing to rebuild what had been shattered. Carl approached, his face hard, but with a glimmer of something like relief. "We've held the line for now, but this isn't over." Mariah's jaw tightened. "Then we keep fighting." I looked at her, the woman who had become my anchor in a world gone mad, and felt a fierce pride swell inside me. "No matter what comes next," I said, voice low but certain, "we face it together." She smiled a fierce, fierce smile, and in that moment, I believed it more than ever. Together, we would write the next chapter. Together, we would survive. I helped her up into the sturdy branches of the old oak, its rough bark pressing against our palms. She settled beside me, her breathing slowing as she found a moment of calm. Together, we watched the sun dip low, painting the sky in streaks of gold and blood red. The world below seemed distant, the war and chaos fading into the background of this quiet, fleeting moment. Mariah leaned against the trunk, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she murmured. I nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon where day bled into night. "Yeah, like the world's holding its breath." She smiled softly, fingers brushing against mine. "For once, maybe we can too." In the fading light, nothing needed to be said. We simply sat there, two souls battered but unbroken, finding strength in the silence and the promise of a new dawn. As the last rays of sunlight softened the sky, Mariah turned to me slowly, her eyes catching the fading light with a shimmering warmth. Without a word, she leaned in, her lips brushing gently against mine, tentative at first, like testing the fragile calm between us. Then the kiss deepened, growing with a quiet urgency that spoke of everything left unsaid, the fear, the hope, the fierce need to hold on. Her hand found my cheek, fingers tracing the line of my jaw as if memorizing every inch. 95. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her closer into that fragile moment suspended between sunset and nightfall. The world around us faded away, leaving only the softness of her breath and the steady beat of our hearts, joined in something unbreakable. When we finally parted, her eyes held mine, fierce and tender all at once. "We'll get through this," she whispered. I nodded, voice barely more than a breath. "Together." Then I felt it, a tear, warm and sudden, slipping down her cheek and landing against mine. She didn't pull away. I kept my arms around her, and she let the silence speak. That tear said more than words ever could. All the loss, all the weight, all the years she'd held strong for everyone else. Now, for this one quiet breath of time, she let herself fall. "I thought I'd lost myself," she murmured, barely audible. "But you found me." I pressed my forehead to hers. "You were never lost." She closed her eyes. Another tear followed the first, and I felt it too, like her pain became mine. I didn't try to fix it. I just held her tighter, letting her know she didn't have to carry it alone anymore. The wind rustled the branches above us. But here, in this quiet place, nothing could take her from me. She curled her fingers into my shirt, clutching like she was afraid to let go. Her breath hitched softly as she leaned into me, her head tucked just beneath my chin. I could feel her heartbeat, fast and fragile, syncing with mine in that trembling stillness. "I didn't think I'd ever feel safe again," she whispered. "You are now," I said, steady, sure. "Right here. With me." She nodded slowly, her cheek brushing against my chest. I ran my fingers gently through her hair, letting the warmth of the moment settle in. It was more than comfort, it was something sacred. A peace we had fought too long to earn. The sun dipped lower behind the trees, casting gold across her face. Her eyes shimmered with the last of her tears, but her lips curved ever so slightly, soft, vulnerable, real. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. "We write it," I replied. "Together." She looked up at me then, really looked. And I saw it all, the fight, the fear, the hope trying to rise again. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You're not alone anymore, Mariah." She took a long breath, then smiled faintly. "Then let's not waste another second." 96. She pulled me closer, no hesitation now, just raw need, not for touch alone, but for something deeper. Her hands gripped the sides of my face, her thumbs brushing just beneath my eyes as if she could feel the years I'd carried behind them. And maybe she could. "I see you," she murmured. "All of you. Even the parts you hide." My voice caught in my throat. "I've never let anyone in this far." She leaned her forehead against mine. "Then don't push me away." "I'm not," I whispered. "I won't." A silence fell, not empty, but full. She broke it with a slow, deliberate kiss, warm, reverent, and lingering. I held her waist as if I could protect her from the world, even if just for a little while. Above us, the last of the sun dipped below the horizon. Birds quieted. Leaves rustled gently, but nothing disturbed us. It felt like time had folded in on this moment, letting us exist outside everything. She pulled back, breath trembling. I was afraid I'd never get to feel this. You do now. Her hands moved down my arms until our fingers linked tight. The look in her eyes wasn't fragile anymore. It burned with something fierce and unspoken. Promise me something, she said. Anything. Don't die on me. I wasn't planning to, I said, and she gave the smallest laugh through her nose. We sat there in the tree, side by side, breathing each other in. Whatever was coming, whatever storm waited beyond the horizon right here, we were untouchable. 97. Shadows behind us, the wind had turned colder overnight, rustling through the canopy like whispers we couldn't quite catch. By dawn, the forest was hushed too hushed. I woke to the sound of my own heartbeat and Mariah still curled against me, her breath slow, steady, her hand tucked into mine like she'd never let go. I eased myself upright, careful not to stir her, but her eyes fluttered open anyway. Something's wrong, she said quietly, as if the air itself might be listening. I nodded. I feel it too. We didn't waste time. We climbed down from the tree and practiced silence, boots landing in moss and fallen leaves. Clover, ever alert, had already slinked ahead, her raptor tail low and rigid. As we moved, I kept glancing back, not at the trail, but at Mariah. She moved like someone trained for war, but she hadn't been born to it. That made all the difference. She fought because she had to, not because she wanted to. And I couldn't help thinking how much I didn't want to lose her now. Carl's voice came through the calm. You've got movement, west side. For figures. Not ours. How close? I asked. Too close. You'll see Em in under a minute. We ducked behind a rock outcropping just as the first shadow appeared through the trees. Black armor. Red lenses. The kind of soldiers that didn't ask questions, only obeyed. Mariah's breath hitched. It's them. The trackers. I reached for her hand, squeezed once. We don't run anymore. Remember? She squeezed back. Then we stand. I motioned for Clover, and she fell in low beside us. We didn't need to speak. We just moved, her to the left flank, me to the right. Mariah stayed centered, rifle steady, eyes locked forward. The moment they stepped into the clearing, we opened fire. It was fast and brutal, no hesitation. Clover lunged and took one down with a sickening crack. Mariah dropped the second with 3 sharp bursts to the chest. I got the third in the thigh, then the head. But the 4th one didn't go down. He didn't even flinch. He stepped into the clearing, taller than the rest, armor glinting silver in the morning light. Something about him felt wrong. Off. Like he wasn't just here to kill. Mariah's breath faltered. Jay, that one. I've seen him before. 98. The soldier raised his visor. A familiar face stared back. Her face. Mariah stumbled back a step. No, that's not possible. It wasn't a soldier. It was her sister. Elise, Mariah whispered, voice cracking. The woman Elise didn't speak. Her eyes were cold, unreadable. A scar ran down her cheek that hadn't been there in any photo. I stepped between them instinctively. You're not taking her. Elise looked at me, then at Mariah. And then she smiled, a slow, chilling thing. I'm not here to take her, she said. I'm here to break her. Mariah's hand went to her chest like she'd been punched without being touched. I took aim. Elise didn't flinch. Then she turned and disappeared into the trees. Gone like smoke. Mariah fell to her knees. The world spun around us, and none of it felt steady anymore. I dropped beside her, wrapping her in my arms. I've got you, I said. You're not alone. But her voice trembled like a child's when she whispered. She was supposed to be dead. Click. 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 3 sets of eyes locked onto Mariah, rifles trained with deadly precision. The cold metal pressed against her skin, a brutal reminder of all the years spent apart. The tension thickened the air, suffocating and sharp. Mariah's breath hitched, her body trembling not from fear, but from the weight of recognition. Faces from a past she had tried to bury, siblings hardened by time and circumstance, now standing inches away, guns aimed steady. Then, something cracked. Elara, the eldest, caught sight of the state Mariah was in, the dirt and bruises, the haunted look in her eyes, and the gun in her hands wavered. Her fingers loosened. Cade, the youngest, blinked, his weapon slipping from his grip and hitting the ground with a dull clatter. He sank to his knees, chest heaving. "I thought you were gone," he whispered, voice breaking. 99. Rowan, the middle brother, held firm a moment longer, jaw clenched as if fighting a war inside himself. But then his gaze flicked to Mariah's battered face and the man standing protectively at her side. The hard edge softened, just enough for his weapon to lower slowly. The silence stretched. Mariah's lips trembled, eyes searching theirs for the sister and brothers she remembered, the family fractured but not forgotten. Her knees buckled. Slowly, she dropped down beside them, the weight of years pressing into her bones. They closed the distance between them, no words needed, only the raw ache of reunion and the promise of forgiveness still fragile but alive. The guns lay forgotten in the dirt. For the first time in so long, they were just siblings again, broken, battered, but together. They stayed there for a long moment, the four of them huddled together in the dirt, silent except for the ragged breaths that spoke of pain and relief tangled tight. Mariah's fingers found Elara's hand first, trembling as she squeezed. Elara's eyes glistened, and she didn't pull away. Cade wiped his cheek, the dirt smudging the tear that fell, and whispered, "We never stopped looking for you." Rowan's jaw tightened, but his voice was soft when he said, We thought you were lost to them." Mariah shook her head slowly. "I was trapped, but I fought. I had to fight." Her gaze flicked to me, and I stepped closer, offering a steadying hand. She took it without hesitation. Elara looked at me, a flicker of wariness in her eyes, but she said nothing. Cade looked up at Mariah again, voice breaking. "You don't have to fight alone anymore." Rowan nodded, voice stronger now. "We're here. We're family." Mariah's chest rose and fell with a shaky breath, the weight of years pressing down but somehow lighter now. "I'm here," she said finally. "And I'm not going anywhere." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the clearing, but for the first time in a long time, there was a flicker of peace. Not the end, but a new beginning. They stayed there for a long moment, the four of them huddled together in the dirt, silent except for the ragged breaths that spoke of pain and relief tangled tight. 100. Mariah's fingers found Elara's hand first, trembling as she squeezed. Elara's eyes glistened, and she didn't pull away. Cade wiped his cheek, the dirt smudging the tear that fell, and whispered, "We never stopped looking for you." Rowan's jaw tightened, but his voice was soft when he said, We thought you were lost to them." Mariah shook her head slowly. "I was trapped, but I fought. I had to fight." Her gaze flicked to me, and I stepped closer, offering a steadying hand. She took it without hesitation. Elara looked at me, a flicker of wariness in her eyes, but she said nothing. Cade looked up at Mariah again, voice breaking. "You don't have to fight alone anymore." Rowan nodded, voice stronger now. "We're here. We're family." Mariah's chest rose and fell with a shaky breath, the weight of years pressing down but somehow lighter now. "I'm here," she said finally. "And I'm not going anywhere." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the clearing, but for the first time in a long time, there was a flicker of peace. Not the end, but a new beginning. The sky darkened slowly, the first stars winking awake above the quiet forest. We stayed close, the siblings forming a fragile circle around Mariah, as if the simple act of presence could shield her from the past's lingering shadows. Elara pulled her jacket tighter around her, her eyes never leaving Mariah's face. "We've heard whispers about what they did to you, about the experiments." Mariah's fingers clenched. "They tried to break me, tried to turn me into something I'm not. But I'm still me, still her." Cade swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "We want to help, if you'll let us." Rowan's gaze swept the trees, alert even now, but his tone softened. "This fight, it's bigger than us all. But family, that's what holds us together." I stepped forward, meeting their eyes. She's survived because she never gave up. And because she's not alone anymore. Mariah's eyes found mine, shining with something fierce and tender all at once. We have a chance now to end this for good. A breeze stirred the leaves, carrying away the weight of silence and pain. Together, we stood. Together, we faced whatever came next. 101. Rowan's eyes flicked toward the tree line, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. We brought friends. From the shadows, figures stepped forward, rugged, battle-worn, but eyes sharp and steady. Faces both new and familiar, hardened by their own fights, but ready to stand beside us. Elara nodded, voice steady. We're not alone anymore. And neither are you. Cade's grin was small but fierce. Time to take the fight to them. Mariah's gaze hardened, the fire reigniting behind her eyes. Then let's finish what we started. I felt the weight of that moment settle over us, no longer scattered, no longer hunted. Together, with old blood and new allies, we were a force to be reckoned with. And the war had only just begun. From the edge of the trees, Cade stepped forward, a proud grin spreading across his face. Behind him, a low rumble stirred the underbrush, growing louder by the second. Shadows moved sleek, powerful shapes slipping through the foliage with uncanny grace. Two real raptors emerged, their scales glistening faintly in the fading light, eyes sharp and alert. They circled slowly, muscles rippling under taut skin, tails swaying with measured strength. One gave a low, guttural hiss, a sound both warning and welcome. Mariah's breath caught, a mix of awe and relief washing over her. I thought we'd lost them. Cade reached out, running a steady hand along one raptor's neck. They're loyal. They've been waiting. Elara and Rowan exchanged a glance, a spark of hope igniting in their eyes. The presence of the raptors shifted the air. Suddenly, we weren't just a small band of fighters anymore. We had something primal, something fierce, backing us. I looked at Mariah, the weight of what was coming pressing down but also lifting us higher. With them, we stand a chance. She nodded, voice steady. It's time. The raptors let out a low, synchronized growl, and with that, our new army took shape, ready to fight, ready to survive, ready to reclaim what was ours. The rumble beneath our feet grew louder, shaking the earth like a distant thunderstorm. Cade's grin widened as more shapes moved through the trees, massive, powerful silhouettes that dwarfed even the raptors at our sides. From the shadows emerged towering dinosaurs, ancient behemoths brought back to life. A pair of triceratops stomped forward, their massive horns gleaming like polished steel, nostrils flaring as they snorted steam into the cool air. Behind them, a colossal brachiosaurus stretched its long neck high above the canopy, casting a sprawling shadow over us. The ground trembled with each step, and even the raptors lowered their heads in deference to the giants. Mariah's eyes widened in awe, the weight of the moment sinking in. We're not just fighting back, we're rewriting the rules. 102. Elara stepped forward, voice steady but filled with wonder. These creatures, our allies, remind us that nature's power is still ours to command. Rowan clenched his fists, determination hardening his features. With this kind of strength behind us, nothing can stand in our way. I looked around at the assembled force, the siblings, the raptors, the towering dinosaurs, and felt a surge of hope unlike anything before. This is our army, I said quietly. And this time, we're the hunters. The massive creatures let out a chorus of roars and bellows, shaking the forest as our battle cry echoed into the gathering night. The ground trembled beneath us, a thunderous heartbeat syncing with the fury rising in our chests. The towering dinosaurs shifted, muscles coiling like living war machines, ready to unleash devastation. Mariah's voice cut through the charged air, fierce and unwavering. No more running. No more hiding. Tonight, we take back everything. Elara, Rowan, and Cade spread out, signaling their teams into position. The raptors snarled low, tails lashing, eyes blazing with primal hunger. The massive triceratops pawed the earth, their horns gleaming sharp under the moonlight. I tightened my grip on my rifle, adrenaline flooding my veins. Let's kick their ass. A roar erupted from the Brachiosaurus, shaking the trees as it lowered its colossal neck to charge forward. The battle had begun. We surged together, human and beast, an unstoppable force crashing into the enemy like a hurricane. Gunfire echoed, mixed with the roars and screams of dinosaurs charging into the fray. The ground shook beneath the thunder of their feet, the air thick with smoke and chaos. They never saw us coming. Not like this. Not like us. And when the dust settled, only one thing was certain. We were survivors. And we were victorious. From the dense shadows beyond the battlefield, a low, guttural growl rolled forward, deep, terrifying, impossible to ignore. Heads turned as the earth quaked beneath pounding footsteps. Then, through the fog and smoke, a massive shape emerged, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Its jaws opened wide, a bone-chilling roar ripping through the chaos like a primal war cry. Muscles rippled under scarred, powerful skin, eyes burning with raw, unyielding fury. The raptors scattered, giving way respectfully as the T-Rex stormed into the fray, tearing through enemy lines with brutal precision. Soldiers scrambled, their weapons futile against the crushing force of the beast. 103. Mariah's eyes widened, a fierce smile breaking through the grime on her face. This is what they never expected. Elise's forces faltered, panic flashing behind their cold expressions. They hadn't counted on nature's wrath joining our fight. I raised my rifle beside Mariah, heart pounding in sync with the thunderous steps of the T-Rex. Let's finish this, I said. Together, human and dinosaur, we tore through the darkness, reclaiming our future, one victorious roar at a time. 104. The reckoning the battlefield was a maelstrom of fury and chaos, gunfire mingled with dinosaur roars, the earth trembling beneath the relentless stampede of ancient beasts and determined fighters. The T-Rex tore through the enemy ranks like a living avalanche, while raptors darted between soldiers, swift and lethal. Mariah stood firm beside me, eyes blazing with unshakable resolve. Her rifle barked in bursts, each shot precise, carving a path through the chaos. Around us, the Triceratops locked horns with armored vehicles, sending them crashing into twisted heaps of metal and fire. Elise's forces, once confident and ruthless, now staggered under the assault. Their formation fractured, desperation flickered in their eyes. Suddenly, a shrill whistle pierced the din, Elise herself, rallying the remaining soldiers. Hold the line. Protect the compound at all costs. But it was too late. The combined might of our new army surged forward, unstoppable and united. Carl called out, voice sharp over the comms. We've got incoming reinforcements. Multiple dropships inbound. Hold your positions. I glanced at Mariah. This is it. We either finish this now or lose everything. She nodded, fierce and steady. No more cages. No more running. The sun began to rise, blood red on the horizon, casting long shadows over the war-torn land. We were in the heart of the storm, facing the reckoning. And we were ready. The sun blazed high, scorching the battlefield strewn with shattered metal and scorched earth. The last echoes of gunfire faded, replaced by heavy breaths and the low growls of dinosaurs reclaiming their territory. Mariah stood beside me, dirt smudged across her face, but fire burning in her eyes. Around us, our allies, human and beast, were battered but unbroken. Elise's forces lay defeated, scattered like shadows swallowed by dawn. No cages remained. No chains. Just the fierce, unyielding pulse of freedom. I reached out, fingers brushing the back of Mariah's hand. She met my gaze, a smile breaking through the exhaustion. This is our beginning, she said softly. We fought for it, I replied. She stepped closer, and in that quiet moment, all the fear, the pain, the loss, everything fell away. We were more than survivors. We were a family forged in fire, ready to face whatever came next. Together. 105. The war was over. But our story? That had just begun. Below, the valley stretched wide, the enemy's last stronghold, a fortress of steel and fire, buzzing with armed guards and armored vehicles. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. Jay stood at the front of the line, heart pounding like war drums in his chest. Around him, Mariah tightened her grip on her rifle, eyes sharp and steady, the ghost of all their past battles burning in her gaze. Beside them, the thunder of heavy footsteps rumbled, the dinosaurs gathering ready. Carl's voice crackled over the comm, steady and calm despite the storm about to break. All units, positions. Wait for my signal. Remember, we hit hard. We hit fast. We hit once. The raptors prowled along the flanks, muscles coiled, tails flicking. The towering Triceratops stomped, ready to charge, and the Brachiosaurus loomed like an ancient titan, neck raised high, eyes glowing faintly in the dusk. The enemy was ready, but they hadn't seen this coming. Suddenly, Carl's voice cut through the silence like lightning. Now, the world exploded into motion. Gunfire erupted, ripping through the air like thunderclaps. Raptors darted forward, teeth flashing, tearing through enemy lines with deadly precision. The Triceratops charged headlong, smashing armored vehicles and scattering squads like ragdolls. The Brachiosaurus swung its massive neck, crushing watchtowers and sending alarms wailing. Above, helicopters screamed in, unleashing volleys of fire, while Jay and Mariah led the human charge, rifles blazing, moving as one with a fierce, unbreakable rhythm. Bullets and blood mingled with dirt and smoke. The enemy fired back with everything they had, missiles streaking, pulse rifles sparking, but the tide was turning. Jay rolled behind a battered wall, narrowly dodging a rocket blast. He caught Mariah's eye across the chaos, and she nodded, a silent vow passing between them. From the Trilene, the T, Rex thundered forward, jaws snapping shut on a squad of soldiers trying to flank. Its roar shattered the air, a primal anthem of power and fury. Elise appeared on the battlefield, her silhouette cutting a dark line against the firelight. Her forces regrouped, desperate to hold the line. Jay met her gaze, voice loud over the chaos. This ends here. The two forces collided in a brutal surge. Mariah sprinted ahead, cutting down enemies with ruthless efficiency, while Jay flanked the rear, picking off commanders and disabling weapon systems. 106. Above, the sky roared as reinforcements dropped, waves of soldiers and dinosaurs pouring into the fight like a living storm. The ground shook beneath the weight of the battle, each second a test of will and strength. Mariah found herself face-to-face with Elise amid the ruin, two women shaped by pain and survival, standing at the crossroads of fate. Their eyes locked, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Why fight this? Elise spat, voice cold. You're one of them. I'm nothing like you, Mariah said, raising her rifle. The firefight around them faded into a brutal dance of survival, shots ringing, fists flying, wills clashing. Behind them, Jay led the final charge, backed by raptors and dinosaurs smashing through the last pockets of resistance. With a roar, the T-Rex charged the enemy's command center, its massive jaws ripping through metal and glass, toppling the last obstacle. Mariah's rifle cracked once more. Elise stumbled, defeated but unyielding. Jay caught Mariah's hand as the dust settled, their breaths ragged but victorious. The battlefield fell silent. The war was over. The enemy crushed in one thunderous, unyielding blow. Around them, the survivors gathered friends, family, and beasts alike, eyes shining with relief and newfound hope. Mariah squeezed Jay's hand, voice low but fierce. We did it. We're free. Jay smiled, the weight of years lifting with the dawn. This is our world now. Together, they stood among the ruins, knowing the scars would remain, but so would the strength to rebuild. The war had ended in one epic, relentless battle. And from the ashes, a new beginning rose. The smoke curled upward, twisting like a dark serpent against the fiery sky. Around us, the battlefield was a storm of chaos. Explosions shattered the ground. Cries of defiance and desperation tore through the air. Every heartbeat thundered with the knowledge that this fight would decide everything. Mariah and I moved as one, a seamless force cutting through the enemy's defenses. Her eyes burned with fierce determination, every shot from her rifle a promise no one else would suffer like we did. 107. The raptors darted through the shattered ranks, teeth bared and claws extended, tearing through soldiers who thought themselves untouchable. Their snarls echoed with wild fury, a reminder that nature itself had risen to fight alongside us. A triceratops slammed into an armored vehicle, sending it spinning like a toy. Dust and debris clouded the air, but the momentum didn't stop. The Brachiosaurus lowered its massive head, smashing through steel girders with ease, clearing a path for the assault. Then, from the east, the ground trembled, an ominous beat growing louder. The silhouette of the T-Rex emerged, massive and unstoppable. Its roar split the air, a sound of ancient wrath unleashed. It charged, crushing anything in its path, a living juggernaut of destruction. Elise barked orders, trying to rally what remained of her forces. But their lines were breaking. Panic flashed in their eyes as our tide swept over them. I caught Mariah's gaze as she sprinted ahead, moving with the grace of a warrior born for battle. Her rifle cracked sharply, felling targets with surgical precision. Together, we pushed deeper into the heart of the enemy fortress. Explosions rocked the ground, and I dove behind a crumbled wall, narrowly avoiding a rocket blast. My heart hammered as I called out over the comms. "Keep pushing. We're almost through." The raptors circled, guarding our flanks. Their eyes gleamed with unspoken loyalty, fighting not just for survival, but for the future we all deserved. Amid the carnage, I saw Elise face Mariah, two forces of nature locked in a silent battle of wills before the storm of violence resumed around them. Their confrontation was brief but fierce, a battle of fire and ice that seemed to hold the weight of everything we were fighting for. A well-aimed shot from Mariah's rifle sent Elise staggering, the fight draining from her eyes. With a final, deafening roar, the T-Rex crashed into the command center, sending steel and glass raining down. The enemy's last stronghold fell beneath the fury of our assault. The battlefield fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the labored breathing of survivors. Mariah grabbed my hand, her grip tight and unyielding. "We did it," she whispered, voice thick with exhaustion and relief. I nodded, the weight of years lifting as the first rays of dawn broke through the smoke. "This is freedom," I said. Around us, the remnants of our allies gathered, battered but victorious. The war was over. The nightmare was done. And in that moment, beneath the rising sun, hope was reborn. The battle had been brutal, unforgiving, but it was ours. And together, we had won. 108.